Here's one of my favorite examples. I'm a big football fan, so I like using these examples. And many, many NFL players and stars have allegedly used stem cell treatment. And Peyton Manning, one of the most famous, used it on his neck. And his portrayal, the portrayal of his use, this headline is a really good example. Peyton Manning is a poster child for stem cell treatment. The assumption is that it worked. And then this commentator said, left to American medical science, Manning would probably still be carrying a clipboard. And this was the year that he made it to the Super Bowl. So you get the sense, right? This kind of portrayal is everywhere. Okay, so what is the problem of stem cell tourism? Why are we talking about it today? Well, let's say someone in this room is, God forbid, is very ill. Or perhaps there's a family with a child who is very, very ill. And you've read all these headlines, and you're awful excited about stem cell therapy. So you get online, and you want to say, is there stem cell therapy for myself or for my sick child? And you Google stem cell therapy, and this is what you get. You get clinics from all over the world that look really, really legitimate. They look exciting. It looks cutting edge. And it looks like they really know what they're doing. These clinics exist everywhere. And they allegedly have treatments for, look at this list. This is just one example, and I could use dozens and dozens of examples, but here's just one. This clinic allegedly has therapies for ALS, Alzheimer's, anti-aging, of course, they all have anti-aging, autism. We're still trying to figure out what autism is, right? These guys have a stem cell therapy for it. Cancer, celiac disease, on and on and on, right? Here's another clinic. This one is in Ukraine. They have they even have they get a top 6 list of their most favorite treatments. Autism treatment again, diabetes treatment, MS treatment, very common in this realm. You get the idea. And again, anti-aging. There we go. One more example. Here's a company that allegedly has treatments for autism, for Parkinson's disease, again, very complicated disease, and for diabetes. And how do they back this up? How do they normally back up what's going on here? How do they sell this to people? Well, they almost always do it with testimonials, right? If you learn one thing from today, if something is being marketed through testimonials, it doesn't work. Okay, whether it's a diet, an exercise, you name it, a supplement. So that's almost always how they put it forward. They have these testimonials, or sometimes the testimonials are from patients, and sometimes they're from the professionals in the clinics. Talking about their experience, but that's how they do it. There's very rarely any kind of real data or good clinical data. Now, so you got that language, right? You guys, these companies allegedly have all these treatments that are being offered. Let's take a look at the actual state of the science. And I know you guys have already looked at this, and it is extremely exciting, and things are moving towards the clinic rapidly, which is exciting. But let's look at what the state of the science really is to some, I think, and I think this is a fair representation. So what I did very, very recently is I went to some leading scientific and professional institutions to get their take on the state of the science. So this is the ISSCR. Maybe you guys have even heard that language here already. That's the International Society for Stem Cell Research. Their take is that the list of available treatments is still extremely restricted. And it's really only for certain cancers, and that's the ones involving bone marrow, and skin grafting, and some kinds of grafting. That's for burns. The Eurostem Cell said the same thing. Those are the only therapies that are available. Then you go to the Stem Cell Network here in Canada. Yay. They say the same thing. Bone marrow, skin grafting, only 2 that are available. They note that a lot of exciting stuff's happening, but it still requires considerable study and testing. And then then Stem Cell Australia, again, same message. That's the reality. What an incredible difference in the language, right? From these treatments that are allegedly available and being offered to patients and the real state of the science. So in 2008, we decided to do a study of these clinics. And the reason we actually did this study was because we thought, look, if people were informed, and if they actually knew what was going on, so if they were completely informed about the state of the science, perhaps it's okay for them, right, to spend money on these they're desperate. So we thought, what's actually being offered? So what we did is we looked at all these clinics, and we got a sense of what's being offered, and then we matched that to what the actual science said. And what did we find? It was really depressing. We found that these clinics portray this work, these therapies, as if they're efficacious, and as if they're risk-free, and as if they're routine. And then was there any evidence in 2008 to support their claims? And of course, we found the answer was no. So we redid that study, thinking that maybe it was getting better. We redid it. This was published just last year, early last year, and it found in fact, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. So that is sort of the state of the situation. You can see why that's really problematic. How big of a problem is this? I get that question a lot. Is this a little niche issue? Well, it's really hard to tease out the numbers here. It really, really is, because it's largely an internet-based industry, right? So getting a sense of how many patients there are is tough. But some of my colleagues have given it a try, and this is a quote from Doug Sipp, who's probably one of the international leaders in this area, and he figures it's over $1 billion a year industry. He thinks it's very, very large. My colleague Edna Einstedel at the University of Calgary, and this article is actually even getting a little bit old, she's counted over 700 clinics around the world. So just looking at those numbers, you get a sense this is a big phenomenon. How many patients are going? Again, really, really hard to get a sense of that. And this is an old slide, but I use it for a reason. And I actually met one of the people from this clinic, and they gave me even bigger numbers. But they claim that between 2005 and 2009, as you can see the date of this article, they saw over 5,000 patients in their clinic alone. And this is just the disease-oriented one, not the anti-aging kind of Kim Kardashian patients, just the disease patients. So that's one clinic. Now, do we believe those numbers? I don't know. He actually told me the numbers were larger, the person I met from the clinic. So you get a sense the number of patients could be huge. Now, a study that we did, and we did this was a study of the popular press, so you have to be careful how you interpret the pie, but it gives you a sense of where these clinics are. There really are all over the world, and increasingly, they're even in the United States, okay? So they are all over the world, which makes regulation really tough. And who's going to these clinics? Well, I won't go into detail here, but I do want to highlight the fact that from this study, the number or the percentage that are kids. So a large percentage are kids, so parents taking them to these clinics. Okay, so you guys might think, well, what's the harm? So we have this phenomenon, we have science exploitation happening. What's the harm? If people want to spend their money on these therapies, why not let them, right? Well, the harm can be really significant. Well, first of all, there's actual physical harm. If, in fact, they are injecting pluripotent stem cells or even multipotent stem cells into you, that's a real thing, right? That could be really problematic. And there is a record of, there is some evidence of people growing tumors, et cetera, as a result of this kind of treatment. So that's problematic. There have been deaths associated with the therapies. Now, this is not necessarily death from the actual stem cells. This is death from the aggressive nature of the intervention that they used. And then here's another good example of the kind of thing that can happen. This is kind of gross. This was an anti-aging thing. She had stem cells injected into her skin, and she actually, so these probably were stem cells because she grew bone fragments in her eyelid, which is really creepy. So don't do this, you guys. So you have actual physical harm that can result from going to these clinics. In addition to that, you have financial harm, the potential for financial exploitation. And I think this is almost underplayed in the discussions around this, because the harm can be significant. We found in our older study that it was about, I think it was $29,000 was the average cost for a treatment. If you get multiple treatments, the Hopkins group found $50,000. If you get multiple treatments, you're quickly getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're flying to one of these clinics and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. That happens quickly. And a lot of people have to raise this money. They raise the money from family, from church groups, from neighborhoods. My wife is a family physician, and she's even had some of her patients do that in order to go to one of these clinics. The other problem, the other harm, and it's very relevant to this group, from what you've heard today, is it also has an impact on public trust in the legitimacy of the field. And that relates back to what I was talking about before, this disconnect between how popular culture is representing stem cells and the readiness of stem cells and the actual science. And if there is a huge disconnect, if there's a huge gap, research tells us the public could lose trust in the field. So this is really problematic.